Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Castaway Anime. I'm Neon Manta,
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
and today we're covering the second half of Lycoris Recoil and recoiling in disgust because of how bad it was.
Are you being serious or sarcastic?
Nah, it was pretty good.
Okay.
It wasn't as good as I was hoping, but it was good. I overall ended up liking the show. And remember, if you enjoyed the podcast, please be sure to hit the like button, head on down to the comments to let us know what you think of the show, and finally, subscribe to the channel for more episodes of Castaway Anime and other videos.
I guess I'm going to start this with a prediction as to why, because you said it was less good, which I completely agree with, by the way, and I'm just gonna just take a guess and say, like, okay, I've always been I wouldn't say dissenting opinion, because in the first podcast I was relatively positive about it, but it was always the less enthused one and the one more pessimistic about where the show was going. I was like, oh, I'm not sure if it'll actually capitalize on its themes and all its ideas. I tended to be the more downer opinion, and you were like, dude, don't be such a pessimist. It's gonna be good. They have talent. Look at this. Look, they're doing the good writing and the fun characters. Don't be don't be so down in the dumps, Crunchy Bagels. And I think it's a matter of
I'll hold a slight L on that one. I'll maintain the opinion that is overall a good show, but we'll get into why I will hold a bit of an L on that one.
I think we're agreeing more than I actually expected us to, but I think most of it is just down to how invested we were to begin with. Where it's like, if you're really invested in the show, I can see this being like a decently emotionally compelling finale, even if there are some disappointing aspects about it. Whereas if you're like me, who was okay, so I like Takina. Chisato's okay. I have some issues with their characterization in these episodes, and I'll get to that. But overall, it's like they're not bad characters. But I couldn't give two shits about the plot. I never cared about the plot. I was never hype at all during the action scenes, because I'm just not into that stuff. I was always here for the slice of life and the characters in the slice of life scenarios. So, to me, this finale is like the less good parts of the beginning half, plus a bunch of disappointing stuff on top of that. So obviously, I'm going to come away with a rather negative opinion of it.
All right. I'm interested to see the final impressions early. So let's pull a Cyberpunk real quick. And what did you give it at the end?
I originally gave it a 5, but I was like, this is way worse than Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and so I ended up lowering it to a strong 4 out of 10.
God damn, boy!
Yeah, I don't like it.
I finished it with the 7.
A 7? God damn!
It's
okay.
It's not a bad show. It just kind of it set up plot points and a theme that it didn't really capitalize on and had a mixed ending.
Well, see, the thing is, right? My investment in the first half was always wavering. For the first 2 episodes, I was bored and didn't care about anything. Then Takina got good, and I kinda liked Chisato. But it's like, for me, there's this concept of a show getting... Basically, it's like an entry point, where it's like, when I watch a show, there's a thing I'm looking for that I can connect with. And once I connect with something about a show, it's like the rest of it, sort of opens up to me, and it's like easier to parse
I
and
hear
enjoy.
You. That's how I was singing my praises about the show, because I connected so hard with the theming that was going on so present and immediately in the first episode back in the
you resonated with the theming. Well, it sounds like you got really disappointed here, because, I mean, goddamn, they did not go anywhere with that.
Yeah, they didn't.
If that's
They
your
kinda
entry point,
didn't.
if that was my entry point, I'd give it a 3.
Well, okay, hold on. That was my entry point, but they kept hooking me in with all of these likable characters, the great presentation, the just pretty much god tier performances.
I mean, I
Oh,
definitely like the performances.
Chisato's at least is god tier.
Yeah. I like both of their performances. Takina's voice is amazing and music to my ears. And there's definitely a lot of charm in the animation. But it's like Lycoris Recoil feels like a show where it's like it's all decently well, okay, not all decently written. There's things that are very much not well written in this finale, but for the most part it was like a decent holistic experience, but it's like my entry point, the closest thing I got to an entry point was Takina, but that's not like it's like if you're connecting with one character primarily, it seems like the show doesn't have a lot that's resonating with you. Whereas with
Is
Call of the
is
Night, which is another show that season that I really loved, my entry point for that was the vibe, just the entire vibe of watching the show, to the point where if the characters were garbage, I'd probably still give it a 5 out of 10 because it was so much fun to just exist in that directing style and those vibes and that OST.
I will
No,
say I am surprised that I'm coming away with this show that I was claiming to be, oh yeah, this is like one of my favorites, if not my favorite from the season of all the shows that we watched at the Summer Impressions cast. And now I'm coming away with being like, you know what? Call of the Night was better.
it was
I'm
way better.
all right. To be fair though, Call of the Night only clears it because Anko is by herself is better than almost the entirety of Lycoris Recoil, and if she were not, then Call of the Night would be like a 7 or a 6. So,
I guess that's
take that for
fair
what it
enough.
is.
Anko is the most based character on the entire planet, but I digress. So,
I was gonna say is you were like coming down on the show, like saying that you couldn't get into it outside of Takina. You didn't really have like a point to be like, yeah, I feel like I'm experiencing the show and having a good time with it. I was gonna say, is this a certified my name is Crunchy Bagels and I do not care for action moment?
partially, because obviously it's like the slice of life action duo, right? But even still, like, okay, so this is gonna sound like a weird comparison, but Assassination Classroom is the first show that comes to my mind, right? That's
I don't blame you. They're both about training child soldiers.
yeah, they are. Assassination Classroom is this weird ass off the walls shonen show that's sort of like half slice of life and then half shonen action, but still very odd. And I won't say that the action in Assassination Classroom is necessarily the greatest. In fact, I'd probably say that the choreography in those scenes are probably worse than the choreography in Lycoris Recoil, but I was so much more hooked into the characters and stakes in Assassination Classroom to where I felt tense watching action scenes in Assassination Classroom. That like the final 3 episodes of Assassination Classroom, no spoilers, but it's a big long old action scene. Well, actually no, the 3 episodes before the final episode. But it's mostly one big ol' action scene. And I was so hooked into that, even though the choreography isn't as good as Lycoris Recoil, and even though like Koro Sensei's powers are so incomprehensible that you just almost can't tell who's winning in a fight. And it's like even with all that, I was still so much more hooked into the characters and stakes, which proves to me that it is a matter of character investment and investment in the world, where it's like I can buy into this. I didn't for this.
Do
Even
you think
if
Chisato could take Kuro Sensei?
no way.
Yeah, well, yeah, no. Do you think Chisato could take Nagisa?
uh I mean
Death battle?
that is actually interesting. I could write an entire video script on that pairing, holy shit, but
All
Nagisa
right, well,
doesn't use guns, so I think Chisato would be at a disadvantage.
maybe. Didn't she not block knife strikes before?
She has, but Nagus is very sneaky. You didn't get to this
Wait,
part of the show, but he's like the most assassiny of all the kids, and he's like this like savant at assassination. So, I'd reckon that Chisato would probably get wrecked.
well, we'll leave it up to Wiz and Boomstick one day if they ever make that a death battle.
Well, we've been hyping this up long enough. Do you want to do this episodically, or do you want to just get right to the heart of it and complain / praise it?
I'd say yeah. Let's get right to the heart of it. So what the fuck? They didn't kiss. Instant point taken off already.
So, if you recall, Neon, the viewers have no context for this, but I told you a few weeks ago that during an upcoming podcast, we'd be molding. Because Vlusky...
I had a feeling. I had a feeling this was it. Because like I was like, there's no way he molds about the Owl House. Because he's been sucking its dick too hard.
Oh yeah, no molding about the Owl House, however. So Vlusky sort of let me in on a little secret. He said that the creator, he had looked at like some headline for an anime news outlet or whatever. It was like, the creator of Lycoris Recoil got death threats because Takina and Chisato didn't kiss. And Vlusky was saying this...
That's retarded, and that whoever did that should be fucking had the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, alright, so I'm not saying that death threats are good. However, when Vlusky told me that, my first response wasn't death threats are so messed up. My first response was, what? They didn't get together? What's wrong with this show?
I mean, we got baited. We got Yuri baited.
So, when after I had calmed down, there was a part of me that wanted to be like, you know what, maybe it's my fault for reading into it a little bit too much. But then I think back to it, and all of the things that happened in this show. I think back to all the
moments where they are clearly fucking in love with each other.
And it's like, even if the directors and the writers were all like, they're not gay, they were never intended to be gay, it's like, well, they knew what they were doing at the very least.
It's straight, dude. Everyone would not be the entire Lycoris Recoil fandom would not be shipping them so hard if they didn't think they were Yuri baiting. The literal first eye catcher in the show would not be them topless, holding a gun and a flower up to each other's face, looking like wistfully into each other's eyes, and like be like, yeah, this is all platonic, guys. Why are you reading further into this? That's on you, viewer.
Vlusky was telling me about this one scene he remembered from the show. I don't actually remember it in clear detail, but you might. Where like Takina and Chisato are, I think it's around, I don't know, they're doing something physical with each other. I think episode 3, and one of the bystanders is like, hug?
It's the hug scene where like, oh look, they're getting all sappy, like because they're back in the DA and they're bullying Takina because she was the one who got kicked out, and they're like, oh look, they're being so chummy with each other, how cute, and like Takina's getting pissed at first, but then Chisato just grabs her by the waist, lifts her up, and like swings her around into a big hug, and be like, I'm so glad I met you. While giving like a big blush and an earnest smile, and Takina's being a little embarrassed, like, what the people are looking, bro.
Yeah, it's like, even if, alright, hypothetical, that clearly didn't happen, but just a thought experiment here, right? Imagine if, let's say, they always they didn't intend at all for this to be an actual ship. They were literally always meant to be friends. It's like, well, you still benefited from Yuri baiting. It's like, you still led people on, whether you intended for that to be whether you intended that interpretation or not, which I think they did, you still led people on. Like, this isn't something you can brush away with, oh, they're just friends, bro. And there's this one, I think it's episode 12, where Chisato literally refers to Takina as, I think, her trusted friend or something like that, and I just felt my
subtitle said my earnest friend. Like, she goes out of her way. She says she has friends, but she goes out of her way when describing Takina as her earnest friend.
that moment was spirit-rending, soul-sucking, heart-shattering, just pain. That,
Now,
that
there
made me
is one thing that I want to bring up as like a possible failsafe to this, because there's a bit of a strange bit at the ending. I know I don't mean to jump right to the end immediately, but there's this bit where some fucking nerd looking guy comes up to Chisato. I believe it's an American, and because he's got a piece of paper with him, and he's trying to speak in Japanese off of it, and he's requesting Chisato specifically, and I was taken aback by that, because like he's clearly can't be from fucking DA or anything like that, and not with the government. So, and Chisato's like, "Are you in trouble?" in a adorably English way. Um, so like maybe, and there's also a good chance this doesn't happen because it's an original anime, and this doesn't tend to happen at all for original anime. But I don't know, maybe A1 knows something we don't, and it's got a second season in the back pocket, or maybe there's more to the story, and
I
maybe
saw.
the
Okay, so I saw a lot of people on AniList because I go to the AniList forums. I know I'm a no life degenerate, whatever, and I was scrolling the AniList forums, and a lot of people were saying it ended on a season 2 hook, and I'm like, no, it didn't. No,
it's not a hook. It leaves the door open just enough to be like, hey, our adventures can continue. And because, spoilers, Majima is still alive and still trying to do his thing. The Lycoris may be slightly more out there, but they're trying to sweep it under the rug. And it looks like they kind of succeeded in that front, so
they shouldn't have succeeded, but they did.
We'll get to that. And the whole gang, the Lycoris gang, is back together. They got a food truck in Hawaii, which, bro, I'd be down to watch the gang, pal around in Hawaii doing missions in America. That sounds interesting. We don't
That sounds
name
better
another
than the
anime that
actual
takes
show.
place in Hawaii.
Dude, literally, probably one of my favorite parts of the entire finale, and I think this puts things into perspective, is at the very end where Kurumi's like, "Aloha,"
And just
like
pulls
that,
on the hat.
That scene right there, just that little 2-second clip, is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire block of episodes. That had a lot of charm and character to it that I really resonated with. One of Kurumi's best moments, genuinely. I don't know why I like it so much, but
well, it was cute. And yeah, so the door has been left up. The seeds have been planted, so if they ever want to cultivate Lycoris season 2, they could. They're probably not going to, because it's an original, and they don't really do that with original anime. So,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like they leave it open, but it's barely open. It's like they finished essentially most of the important arcs in this block of episodes. It's a fairly conclusive ending. Conclusive enough that it won't be a nightmare death sentence to the show if it doesn't get a season 2. It literally ends with Chisato and Co. just taking a break from Lycoris stuff. They're just in Hawaii taking a break, and it's like, okay, like, I can see it happening, but it's like, I would put the chances at like 20-30% tops.
Yeah, not even, dude. Name the last. Can you even remember the last time an original anime got a season 2? And I'm talking completely original, not based off of like another pre-existing franchise like Gundam. I'm pretty sure Iron Blooded Orphans got multiple seasons. I'm not talking that. I'm talking like completely original, like Lycoris.
Well, you got me there.
Like, literally, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head right now is Panty and Stalking, and that shit took 10 years and the death of a studio.
I mean, I guess Fooly Cooly got multiple seasons, although people don't really like the future seasons, but I guess that's
well, yeah, even then, that
example.
took fucking over, that took like 2 decades, did it not? Was Fooly Cooly from the 90s or the 2000s? I think the 2000s.
It was from the 2000s.
Okay, so a decade and a half.
Yeah, yeah, a decade and then most of another decade. So it still took a while. maybe in 2032 we'll finally get the season 2 of Lycoris Recoil announced. Aren't you excited?
Hey, well, hey, maybe then Chisato and Takina will kiss, and then we'll look so fucking stupid 10 years from now. We should have given them the benefit of the doubt the whole time.
It's like,
maybe they'll kiss in the manga adaptation. Who knows?
I feel cucked, man. This entire finale just makes me feel
baited us.
cucked.
There's no way around it.
I think they truly did bait us.
And
it's like,
not to, debase the whole show to only being about Yuri and having no other value or worth, but I'm not lying when I say, if they had gotten together, it would have made the show just that much better.
If they had gotten together, I might have... that probably would have put it back up to a 5 for me. Probably just barely, but still would have given it a little bit of extra points on principle alone. But it's like, the fact that it doesn't... Huh?
Yuri's just based.
Yeah, it is. It's just based. But no, you gotta bait us. Although, I'd argue it isn't the worst thing that... I mean, on a personal, spiritual level, it is the worst thing that happened in this block of episodes. And maybe I'm just saying this because I knew beforehand, but, like, there were things that made me far madder in this block of episodes. We'll get to that.
Well, I think we've talked long enough about the Yuri aspects. What do you want to do next?
I guess we'll start sort of... Okay, so I'll start with episode 8, because it's, well, first of all, chronological, but second of all, it's, like, the one where the least stuff happened to my memory. So, alright, so to be fair, my memory of this is a little vague, but it's, like, I think the first half of it is mostly a slice of life episode. The part that stands out to me is that Takina makes this super sweet dish that people really like. And the joke, I didn't get it at first. It's supposed to look like a giant pile of shit. And everyone's laughing that it looks like that. Not gonna lie. Not gonna lie, I saw that at first and I was like, damn, that looks good. I don't know why everyone's acting so disgusted about it.
Wow, bruh.
I didn't notice it.
Dude, it was accompanied by, like, flushing noises from Kurumi, like, as she leaves the toilet.
I didn't get the subtext. I just thought it looked like a sweet thing, and I was like, oh, why is everyone giving Takina such a hard time? But eventually...
Are you so blinded by Takina being your favorite character that you're giving into her delusions of grandeur?
You know, that probably is it. I probably, Takina just resonates with me, and so I'm just seeing the world through her eyes. But anyway, it's episode 8 is probably the most fun episode, just on a basic level, probably because it's the most slice of lifey of all the episodes in this block.
Yeah, it's just Takina being the company budgeter. She's the new financial planner. She makes the parfait cost effective, and that does help the budget of the cafe, and it sells a lot because of the novelty of, like, well, it looks like I'm eating like a giant piece of shit, but it does taste so good.
See, the budgeting thing, I'm now remembering this. You've dug up trauma in me, where before, prior to knowing what horrible things happen in the finale, I was just so excited to watch more Liko Rico, because it was like, it starts off with Takina doing budgeting stuff, and it's, like, super fun, and I really enjoy watching it. That's, like, that put a smile on my face. That feels like it should be in, like, an 8 out of 10 show. And I got really hyped to see where the show went. Was disappointed, but yeah, episode 8. I'm not sure if it's the best of this block, but it probably is. Honestly, it's just mostly a fun slice of life episode. But eventually, I'm looking through my notes. It is
the episode with the famous Chisato thigh meme.
I'm trying to remember what that is.
Oh, come on, dude. It's, like, the most famous thing from that show.
Well, you say famous. I'm not on Twitter. I don't check Twitter at all.
Bro, we gotta get you recirculated, bro. We gotta get you back in touch with reality.
I haven't logged into Twitter in like a week and a half.
This is how you keep up with the times, bro. You did see, because you were not on Twitter, you did not see all of the really good edits of everyone changing Chisato into different anime characters with thick legs, even though she's not actually thick. She's just pressing her legs against the wall and the pinching of it makes her legs look bigger. But it was still charming and funny enough for artists to be like, ooh, that's a funny pose. I will edit it to be other anime characters like the Love is War girls or the Dragon Maid girls. You missed out on Toru thigh wall. And that's your loss.
That does you know what, that is a loss. I'm really curious now that you say that they did a Dragon Maid edit, and I'm very sad that I did not witness it. God, that could get me back on Twitter. No, don't get back on Twitter, Crunchy. No,
the Owl House art alone should be reason enough to get back on Twitter. But I digress.
I did read a couple of those Owl House comics he sent me. I know I'm digressing here, but it was very fun. It did tempt me to log back in.
Alright, well, that's neither here nor there. Back to Lycoris. Even after everything, how can you possibly give this show a 4 out of 10 when it has Chisato doing a Bruce Lee impression?
Honestly, I don't remember it.
You don't remember when she goes like that?
I haven't seen anything Bruce Lee related, so I wouldn't get it even if I saw it.
Bro, you ain't just out of touch with Twitter, you just out of touch with pop culture in general.
I am.
Bro, I haven't seen a Bruce Lee movie either. I know the Bruce Lee shtick.
All I watch are cute girls shows from Japan, and I guess also the Owl House. That's it. I'm completely out of touch.
The most typical anime fan.
Yes, I'm the spitting image of anime cute girls normie who just watches cute girls shows in my free time.
Don't worry, one day when we get the audience big enough to accept us doing anything outside of anime, we will watch all of the Tarantino movies. We'll watch all of the Coen brothers movies. Every movie that they reference in the Chainsaw Man OP, we'll watch. And we'll get you cultured. We'll get you educated.
That actually sounds like it'd be pretty fun, just watching all the movies from the Chainsaw Man OP. But we're bad at staying on topic. So this episode transitions into a scene of Majima infiltrating Chisato's apartment. You know, he goes in and they have just a normal conversation. It's just kind of, you know, and not a big shootout. They're just talking with each other. And honestly,
they're literally Batman and Joker.
It was, I mean, not to do a typical Crunchy hate action moment, but it was like way more tense than any of the action scenes in this show. Not gonna lie. I found that scene to be quite fascinating, and probably my favorite moment of tension between Chisato and Majima. But admittedly, I was a bit curious as to why they weren't killing each other, and they do get into that later, like in the finale, so it's not a plot hole or anything, but it was a question in the back of my mind.
Well, I'm pretty sure Majima's like, he notices Chisato's heart issue, and it's like, well, killing you like this when you're not like giving it your all would be no fun, so
well, that's in the finale.
Let me toss you a soda. Well, I think in the episode then when he breaks into her house and holds her at gunpoint, he's just trying to, you know, talk to her about the whole Allen Institute thing, and it's just about the Allen Institute as far as I can recall.
Yeah, that is what he's there to do. But like, also, I mean, at this point in the story, at least my impression of him was that he saw Chisato as like this, well, his rival, be a thorn in his side that would get in the way of his plans, and that was where I was coming at it from. But obviously that didn't end up being the case, so it's not a plot hole or anything like that. I'm not going to claim that. A good scene still. I like any excuse to get the villain and the protagonist just having a conversation and talking. Because, like I said about Anko and Ko's conversation in Call of the Night, that to me is like the tensest type of character interaction, even more so than the actual fight scene. And
While we're on the subject, how do you feel about Majima as the ultimate big bad of the show?
Okay, God. I mean, this goes way into the finale, so do you want to just talk about Majima holistically at this point, or do you want to?
Yeah, might as well.
All right. So, I'll start off with the good things about Majima in the finale, right? So obviously we were pretty hyped about him in the first podcast. Well, I think you were more so than me. You tend to get really attached to villainous presences. I thought he was fine. I enjoyed him well and fine enough. And this block of episode has my favorite Majima moment. All right. So here we go. Best Majima moment is when he decides it's such a, at least I thought it was, a very characterizing decision on his end where he dumps 1,000 different guns into the city and tells all of the citizens over a broadcast that, hey, there's 1,000 guns here, take your arms.
Dude, he's pro Second Amendment. All the
Yeah.
Lycoris are crossing into the border and taking our jobs. We gotta make sure that we are able to fight back.
See, what made that so good to me is that like it says so much about his character while not having to have him explain what he's all about.
The only way to stop a bad Lycoris with a gun is a good citizen with a gun.
See, so throughout the show, Majima's whole thing was, emphasis on was, but was that he is very much, he's against this highly authoritarian licorice system. So basically the licorice they stop crime before the crime actually happens. To do that, obviously, you need to use a lot of information networks, invade people's privacy. The only way that system
a lot
would
of
work
killing without
is,
any proper criminal apprehension.
Yeah, also
like,
that
there is no
there's
arresting. It is just execution.
Yeah, and it's like, they're very authoritarian. You don't get a fair trial. I mean, these information networks have to be, I guess, a highly extrapolated version of the techno overlord dystopia we're rapidly approaching. And the show's just extrapolating upon that to be like, they know as soon as you're about to commit a crime, at least generally speaking, they have eyes pretty much everywhere. And Majima, he ain't about that. And it's like, when he gives the citizens guns to fight back, it's like, duh, of course he wants to arm the populace. Of course he's pro Second Amendment. This guy probably has like 7 Don't Tread on Me flags in his bedroom. It's like...
he was there on the January 6th Capitol raid.
Oh, that is something he would do.
We're gonna make Enkuboku great again.
So that's such, I just love it so much because it says so much while not having him say really anything. He's not explaining his ideology. He's just acting.
Well, he's kind of doing that, but he's not giving like the play-by-play breakdown of like, haha, I have scattered guns all throughout the land, citizens. Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, he does kind of, he words it in a way that's not just him making the play-by-play. He does kind of just tell the populace to take up arms against the Lycoris because he frames them in order to make them look to be like, oh yeah, they're government-employed peacekeepers that will stop at nothing to wipe out everyone who knows about their identity, including you, the viewer watching this right now.
Yeah, that is fair, but like you said, it's not the play-by-play, and I think it's a lot more creative than just having him explain his ideology to the populace and just be like, imagine how much lamer that scene would be if he was there to... Yeah, he does a lot of it.
He does kind of do that, though.
Yeah, he does do a lot of it, but it's like, imagine how much lamer it would be without the gun scene.
Oh
At
yeah,
least to
if he
me.
just did it over broadcast and didn't spread 1,000 guns all throughout the area to arm the populace, if this was all not a part of his big Joker plan, and he was just broadcasting like the Riddler, then yeah, that would be lame.
Yeah, it's just like such a distinct decision to make that I think is highly characterizing for him.
I
I
what
I,
I
I
like
hope I'm
about it
explaining this well.
Yeah, like what I like about it is that I find it interesting that Majima is trying to expose the truth about the Lycoris to the public while like framing them and lying about what they are actually like capable of towards people. But then I think about it, it's like, but is that not what defines the existence of a Lycoris? A lie? The idea that you're not supposed to know they exist and their existence should not even be known to the public. So is what Majima is doing framing them to be these murderers without judgment? Is he so wrong? Are they not so alike?
I mean, Majima has always been portrayed as this sort of like Machiavellian sort of guy where he's willing to kill innocents in order to achieve his ends. He literally fires into a subway, and it only coincidentally, well, not coincidentally, the Licorice were there and probably managed to get it cleared, but he literally fires into what he thinks is supposed to be filled with innocents. And it's like he's willing to stoop to their level in order to just trample down the Licorice and get them got. And I do like that about his character. As long as they're consistent with it, like it's good.
He's an entertaining villain. Um the problem with him is that they didn't do the one thing that they had to do with him in order to make me like go full circle on him, and that is explain why he is so anti-authoritarian. And like rather they did tell us why he is so
Oh
anti-authoritarian, but they
no,
never showed
it's
us they never gave us they never showed us how he got to that ideology.
okay. So my problem with it is actually a little different than yours, although I do agree. Right, it would be very much fun to see his backstory, but here's my main thing. All right, so in episode 13, I know we're sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but it's still related to Majima. So basically, Chisato and him are having a conversation, and Chisato asks him, why are you doing all this? Why are you against the Licorice? Now, in a good show, this would be where either he says his backstory or he gives Chisato his manifesto and is like, you guys are highly authoritarian, you act like judge, jury, and executioner. And there is a bit of that leading up to this conversation with Chisato. But, this is where he like goes full mask off, I imagine, spills his backstory, spills his heart out, says all the opinions he has in his head. But that's not exactly what happens. So here, I have all of these lines quoted, I just need to find them. I'm looking.
His ass had a whole point set up and he didn't even look at the right note page.
Alright, so yeah,
Come
I'm
on, man,
still looking.
I can only stall for you for so long without having to edit all this out.
Alright, so Chisato, I'm at roughly the same place. I'm still just looking around, but yeah, so Majima basically explains that he sides with the populace because they are weak. And this is around the moment in my head where some, not full on alarm bells were going off, but it was like a little bit, that's odd. He's not saying anything about authority or, judge, jury, and executioner. This is his one chance to explain to his arch rival what his true ideology is. And he's really just going to, not start with that, not go all in on what he has seemingly stood for the entire show. But, maybe he's going to the corollary is going to be like, oh, I'm siding with them because they're weak, and they're weak because you're oppressing them through illegitimate means. Now, like, okay, so maybe this could go somewhere. And then Chisato asks, okay, so I finally have the exact quote. So Chisato asks, does that mean you're reluctantly playing the role of the villain? Majima says, I'm not the villain, I'm always siding with the weak. That's interesting. Here's the line that kills me. If DA was the weaker side, I'd be helping you guys out. What the fuck? What?
I mean, I get it.
I don't.
It
All right, here, explain
he
this to me.
All right, so I feel like what he was trying to say was that like he's all about the balance, you know, like it perfectly balances all things should be, anime Thanos, if you will.
That
And
is the vibe I got from that. Yeah.
and
But
he's
go
like,
on.
you know, you can't live in a world of peace, because if you have only peace, then you forget what peace is, and then you know when like reality and its problems and conflicts come knocking at your door, you're not gonna know how to respond. So like that's why he's trying to like expose the Lycoris and bring an end to the peace that Japan's been under for the last 8 years, because it's not a real peace, damn it, it's a fake peace. Like you've all been tricked, you've had the wool pulled over your eyes for so long, and it's time for me to rip it off, damn it. So I think what he meant to say by the like, if the GA was the weak ones, I'd be helping you out. Like if maybe there was no peace at all and it was all just chaos, like, you know, maybe fucking we live in a dystopia where the crime lords have taken over and the mafia, the yakuza have taken over, then he'd be siding with the DA to, you know, fight back against it and bring peace back into a chaotic world. That's the vibe I got.
There's a contradiction there, I feel, which is that Majima, so far in the show, and to be fair, there was the line about him saying like, oh, if you're in peace too long, you'll forget what chaos is like, and I want to bring that back. Like there was that line earlier on, but for the most part, it felt like what he was fighting against was this lie, the lie of peace, and these overly authoritarian means. And I got the impression that his entire issue with the DA was that they're using these authoritarian means. Like I said, he has the "Don't Tread on Me"
They're working
flag
in the
his
shadows
bedroom.
and not allowed to be known by the public.
But apparently, he doesn't actually have a problem with that. Apparently, it's actually just because they're the stronger ones. And if they were weak, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, invading people's privacy and trying to install a fake peace. If you hadn't done that yet, if you were in a weaker position, I'd totally help you out. And it's like, well, that, to me, completely ruins his character. If I seriously take that line at face value and don't assume he's just lying through his teeth, it's like, to me, he's ruined. He was always this anti-authority guy, but now he's all of a sudden like, yo, if, I'm just here to bring balance. I'm here to balance the strong and the weak. And, if you were weaker, and it's like, well, he was always talking about balance, but to me, it was like, I'm going to bring balance back into the hands of the people because they're using authoritarian measures and because they're lying to you and because they're invading your privacy. It wasn't because they're... It's like he wasn't doing it, at least the impression I got was that he wasn't doing it just because the people are weak. He had deeper reasons for it. But with this line, it's like...
I sympathize with where you're coming from, because it is very odd. I agree that it is very odd for him to be, so explicitly anti-Lycoris, authoritarian operating, anti-shadow government, and all that kind of stuff. And then at the last second be like, oh yeah, it's not just because I disagree with everything you're doing. It's really because, like, if you guys were doing all of this but were the weaker group in this power struggle, then I would be the ones helping you guys out in order to bring balance. Like that, I understand why you would think that would, deflate his character a bit, and I would not disagree with you. Like the way you're laying it out, I'm seeing where you're coming from, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, you got a good point.
Yeah, it's like... See,
I wouldn't say he's ruined, but it does take the wind out of his sails just a touch, a tad.
I guess this gets into my broader point that none of the main important characters, I mean main characters, because you could argue that like the leader of DA is an important character, right? But we don't follow her, right? But I'm talking main characters, Chisato, Takina, and Majima. They don't really stand for anything. I mean, you can bring up Chisato's pacifism, and we can get into that. But it's like
I mean,
this
I would
is.
say Chisato pretty firmly stands for the side of life.
I'll get into that when we get into it, but it's like it's my main problem with this show, right? This is my thesis statement right here, right? Is that this is a show with an ideological narrative where both sides are supposed to have a point, and they're supposed to duke out and see, who is the victor, and have all this commentary.
And their
At least
points are on
theoretically, yeah.
entirely unrelated topics.
Yeah, well, in Majima's case, absolutely. And it's like, okay, so Majima technically stands for something, but he doesn't stand for what he should be standing for. It's like, well, he stands for balance, but what does that have to do with anything? That doesn't have anything to do with what the Lycoris are doing. It's like, why is that there? So technically, Majima stands for something, but it's like, well, why? Who cares? And for Takina and Chisato, Chisato does stand for pacifism, kind of. We'll get to that.
And what does Takina stand for exactly?
Nothing. Well, actually, no. She stands for saving Chisato, and it's like, well, hold on.
Wow, what a compelling character.
Yeah.
What an autonomous, independent character.
So, you know how I've been saying I liked Takina this entire time?
I slowly realizing, be like, wait a second. She doesn't really have a role in the narrative as soon as she
I realized it while watching the episodes.
The DA. Her stake in the narrative becomes, I must save Chisato's life.
The moment I realized I didn't like Takina anymore is that I was watching her trying
the walls
to
close in.
It's like, what? She doesn't have anything. Like, in this ideological narrative, she doesn't have an ideology. And I'm like, I realized I was starting to get bored of Takina, because it's like, outside of the slice of life scenes, right? I like her in the slice of life scenes because I resonate with her personality. But as soon as we're in the conflict, which should be characters with ideology facing each other, I'm bored when I see Takina on screen. I'm bored. And it's like, if that's my favorite character in the show, that is not a good look.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm bored when I see Takina on the screen, because it's the cyberpunk effect. It's where it's the cyberpunk effect, but it's doubly damning here because Takina is supposed to be a main character. Like Rebecca, what does she stand for in the grand overall narrative and the themes of cyberpunk edgerunners? She doesn't really stand for anything. She's just a cool character. Takina, her whole thing was that at the beginning that she was, she went against the rules, man, and she was like, you're too off kilter. You gotta play it by the book. We're sending you over to child soldier rehab to get you straightened out. And so, and through that, she meets Chisato, and you would think she'd be like, hey, maybe, like, you've got, like, your priorities straight, but the way you're going about them is maybe a little self-destructive and, like, could be harmful to others around you. Whereas if you would channel that into, a different avenue, and not just see your life as just being a child soldier, realizing that there's more to your life than just working for the DA. But she's once she gets back to the DA, yeah, she feels sad that she's not with Chisato and does take every opportunity to just abandon the DA and go back to Chisato. But not, like, because of that, like, she has no interesting arc anymore. Her arc is done. Now she's just Chisato's overly protective scorned lover.
The DA in this show was always sort of portrayed as like a flawed system, right? In episode 3, it was revealed that they pushed a bunch of blame onto Takina to basically get the leaders out of trouble. The leaders of DA out of hot water. They pushed on to Takina, and it's like that couldn't be more clearly stating this system has problems. Of course,
And
aside
does not
from
respect you.
yeah, and on top of that, there's also the whole general, oh well, they're sort of invading your privacy thing, and it's like, okay, you want to see that go somewhere. The main characters in Lycoris Recoil, and I'm highly disappointed to say this because in the first batch of episodes, it felt like it wasn't going this way because Takina and Chisato do occasionally disobey orders, but it never goes further than that. Takina and Chisato, what they really almost stand for, but not quite, and I will get more into that later, is that they just exist to preserve the status quo, but also they say sometimes you should disobey orders. And it's like, well, hold on. This is an ideological narrative. Like, I want to see the system questioned. I don't want to see some weak ass pansy shit where it's like, oh, the system, I mean, it'll just keep on existing, but sometimes
You mean like how the show ends?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't matter if you're in a corrupt authoritarian system as long as you occasionally disobey orders. You're doing the right thing. Yeah, that's
it's
all
okay,
you need to do.
The corrupt authoritarian system will just reestablish its authority and make everyone think that all of those murders that happened on screen and the whole terrorism plot and the state of emergency that was actually issued was all just a bit, even though you can't fake a state of emergency.
Nothing is more frustrating to me than seeing two ideological sides clash. And then in the very last episode, right, the state of things are clearly awry, and then in the last episode, one side just says, oh, it was just a prank, bro, I wasn't actually fighting you for those reasons, and then the other side gets to preserve their status quo, even though the entire show was about fighting that status quo. Well, it's like, this, I feel cucked. I feel double cucked. I feel triple cucked, even. I will go so far as to say I feel triple cucked. This is why I gave it a 4 out of 10.
Here.
Are you starting to understand me?
I am understanding, but if we can can bring it back around to the positives before we re-tackle the ending again. Why it kind of pisses me off. So now that Takina, your ex-favorite, well, maybe she's still your favorite character by the end.
Yeah, she
has had her role in the her stake in the narrative scrubbed clean. Did Chisato find her way into your haha heart?
Ha ha.
Because they gave Chisato a backstory, but they couldn't afford to give the same luxury to Majima. Oops.
Well, okay, I guess I'll start with her backstory, because I had a prediction for her backstory in the first block of episodes, and I was kinda right, as in her needing the heart transplant gave her an appreciation for life, and that's why she's a pacifist. But
it doesn't take someone too media literate to notice, to figure that one out.
My specific idea was that, all right, in the first block of episodes, we both got the false impression that Chisato used to be willing to kill people because of Majima's memories of Chisato being, giving him the death glare. And it's like, but no, apparently that wasn't the case. She was always a pacifist, and it turns out what that was building to is that Chisato used to be really, really intense near Majima. And I know this is a little bit of a nitpick, but I do feel a little disappointed because I feel like it was steering us towards a certain direction, but then jerked us the other way.
Yeah, I agree. It would I guess I can't be too upset to know that Chisato. I will say the fact that they did do that and made Chisato always to be against killing makes the moment in episode 12 where she fires at Yoshi all the more like spine tingling. That was the most like heart stopping moment in the entire show, because when she like finally has no choice but to shoot at Yoshi, and she makes that like look of fear and disgust with herself, and then lets out that like blood curdling scream. I was like, God damn,
That
this
did
is
get
the good
me.
shit.
Yeah, even though I've spent so long going negative on the show, I will say that got something out of me.
That's probably the best moment in the entire show.
In terms of, I mean, obviously I'm a slice of life show, but in terms of like emotions and narrative stakes, that was absolutely the point that hit
was the peak.
hardest. And it's the one
hit the heart.
You know, however much I will eventually rag on Chisato's ideology, this is the one moment where like the show did something sort of ideological and made it work, which is that Chisato's pacifism is being challenged. It's like, this is a you know, you have everything to gain from shooting this guy. He's clearly a villain. He's not a good guy.
He is allowing you to kill him.
Yeah, he's literally asking you to kill him. And it's like, that did something for me. You know, that is a worldview being thrown into question. If not thrown into question, at the very least doing something very interesting with it. And like the facial expressions she made in the blood-curdling scream are seared into my memory because it was such a memorable expression.
Because it's our happy-go-lucky Chisato who's always like got everything under control and never lets anything get to her. Now she's breaking down in front of us. Because not just that she had to go against her moral code, her reason for living, but also shooting basically one of her two dads.
Yeah, it's a really, like, it stacks on the reasons for her to both kill him and not kill him, and puts her in a decision where she needs to make a difficult choice. Of course, it'll eventually make that choice really, really easy, and make sure that we don't have to think about it anymore. But, you know, in the moment, it was pretty good.
Do you want to just talk about how they kind of robbed Chisato of her decision to spare Yoshi?
So, okay, so her decision to spare Yoshi, it was a moment of basically staying true to her own desires, and, you know, basically sparing even someone begging her to kill him. And it was like, oh, and it was supposedly, emphasis on supposedly.
And it's his fault that she's going to die even faster than expected, because he tried to put her in this checkmate scenario of, haha, I fucked with your fake heart, and now you're gonna die in 2 months unless you take this new heart that's gonna let you live probably your entire life now. And oops, I've done, speaking of, if Majima's the Joker, I don't know what the fuck that makes Yoshi, as he literally had the heart implanted into himself.
Yeah, so this was like a super high stakes decision, and Chisato was basically sending herself to her death through this decision. Now, personally, I never thought I mean, okay, there were some brief moments where I was like, maybe Chisato will die, but then my brain would always kick back into action, being like, no way, no, they're not gonna do it. Like, they introduced the whole
thought about it. I thought, well, it's the as soon as they introduced the new heart, I had the feeling in the back of my head, maybe she does live at the end, because like, why introduce this heart that makes that will allow her to live forever if it's not going to make her live forever?
You want to know what would be super cool though? If she did condemn herself to death in favor of maintaining, staying true to herself, because
she goes out a martyr. Yeah. She goes out true to her word.
You want to know how cool that would be? That would almost be enough to get me to not hate this finale. But instead, Mika, he just gats Yoshimatsu. He
typical black guys,
sucker.
Am I right? I'm sorry. Wait, that's the most hardest I've ever heard you laugh. Did I catch you off guard with
Yes.
that one? Yeah.
Oh god. Well,
it's okay, dude. It's okay. The Lycoris Recoil fans already bombed the video because you said you gave it a 4 out of 10.
yeah. So
we might as well burn the bridge.
yeah, you just make sure the bridge is in ash, completely gone, irreversibly gone. But okay, Mika, he gets the son of a bitch, and then they give, So let's say, Mika, kills Yoshimatsu and then offers Chisato the heart. Do you think she'd take it? If I had to guess, I'd say no. And the writers,
Good thing she's in a coma and she doesn't consent.
So, so the writers clearly realized that Chisato would never even accept the heart, even if Yoshimatsu was already dead. So, Mika just gets the heart installed against her consent when she's in a coma, and it's like, you robbed her of her best character moment. I mean, granted, it's still there. You can still go back and watch it. But you made it worse. You kind of tarnished it. And it's like, well, what the fuck?
Here's how I would have done it. Instead of having... excuse me. Instead of having the heart literally available and, inside Yoshi's chest for him to be like, all you have to do, Chisato, you just gotta kill me and take it. You can do it, Morty. You gotta rip out my heart, Morty. Instead of doing that, I would have been like, listen, I have the ability to build you a new heart. We've finally perfected the blueprint, the schematics to build you a heart that will lead you forever. However, only I have the knowledge or some shit like that. The only way I'll allow you to get it, the only way I'll be able to give it to you is if you kill. And that wouldn't go against his thing of shortening her lifespan in order to make her kill to fulfill the goal, because that's his whole shtick. His Yoshi's whole whole deal in the narrative is that he believes that everyone who has an exceptional talent should be that's their lot in life. Even if you wanted something, even if you wanted to do something else, like how Chisato has all of the talents to make an exceptional hitman or an exceptional assassin, but that's not what she's about. She chose a different path in life, and she doesn't want to be destined to be a killer. She wants to choose the life of a maid cafe, and you know what? She should have the right to choose that, even if it costs her her own life. At least she chose to die and wasn't just destined to be something that she didn't want to be. And
but
so
instead,
yeah, so instead of it being like, all right, so if you finally kill, if you just kill Majima, this guy who's going to enact this horrible terroristic plan, maybe even kill your friend Taki, maybe, I don't know, throw Chisato values Takina's life a lot, clearly, put her life at stake, and be like, hey, the only way to save her life is to take this one. What you gonna do, bench? No, just, I certainly, he had my attention when he, just opened up his shirt and be like, haha, I have taken out my own heart and replaced it with the artificial one, even though I didn't need it. And so to force you to kill me, and so that way you finally are fulfilling the role you were born to play, Chisato. And that would have been cool if Mika did not literally come in and rob that choice from Chisato.
got it, massive. This finale is just full of cucks. Just keeps on cucking us. But okay, so this is going to sound like a huge tangent, unless you have anything more to say on this point, or else I'm going to go into a massive tangent.
Now go ahead.
All right. So, on AniList, I know, I'm going somewhere with this. There was a user who claimed that Chisato was a hypocrite, and I actually agreed with them. And the reason why is because they reckoned that since Chisato, she's a pacifist, but she works within a system that regularly kills people and is willing to use these highly, uh, like, no trial at all, very, very willing to kill, just on a whim. And Chisato is helping that organization, and she is one of their most esteemed members. And but it's just that she personally doesn't kill. And they said that it was a flaw with the show. At the time, I said it wasn't because Chisato's pacifism, it is not necessarily a
Well,
world scale ideology.
yeah, because that's like saying that she doesn't kill, but she works with an organization that like openly kills people. And it's like, well, by that logic, that's like saying like our doctors who work in the military are supporting like our killers because they are fixing people up who kill people, like whether it's for a just cause or not, they kill them. And whether the DA kills for a just cause or not, they kill. So are people who are help in any way, shape, or form associating or helping people that kill, like is Subway at fault? Are they to blame for murders because they sell sandwiches to veterans or soldiers, or like some of their food gets sent to the military's way?
I mean, to be
I
fair,
don't think so.
Chisato definitely isn't a murderer. I wouldn't go nearly that far. She is helping them out. Although, this just gets into my broader point about Chisato's ideology, which is that it was never portrayed necessarily as something that she wanted to apply to the whole world. Her literal, it's not going to be word for word, but it's going to capture the main essence of her point, is that
I disagree with you off rip, but go on. I want to hear your point.
All right. So Chisato, she says that she doesn't want to take away people's time, and that she doesn't want bad people to make her feel bad for killing them. And that to me is like, it signals that her pacifism is more personally motivated. It's like, oh, I went through this heart thing, so I'm going to spare people. It's like not necessarily something she wants to apply to the entire world. That's about all I have to say, so you can debate me epically.
Yeah, well, the way she applies the helping people is that, like, she even says to Majima that that's her ambition in life, is to instead of taking people's time away, she wants to help them while they live. Like, that's why she's in love with the cafe so much. And even when she chooses to close the Lycoris cafe in the wake of Takina going back to the DA and her life coming to an end, all of the regular patrons who like come by and say, like, what the fuck, you can't close, bro, like I've like get all my work done here, I enjoy coming here so much, like you reconsider, okay, because this cafe is like a help to us. And even just outside the cafe, like the regular jobs that they do in the Lycoris outside of their spy ops missions, teaching foreign languages, selling their wares around to people, just like they were helping that one guy, even though it was like a hostage, well, not hostage, it was a secret service aid, what the fuck is it called when you're under protection by the government, witness protection program or some shit like that. And from that one old dude, even though at the end it did turn out to be like he wanted to kill the guy who killed his family, they were also hired to protect him.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it. It's but I don't think it contradicts what I said, which is that it is her personal philosophy that she wants to make an impact on the world positively by helping people and not gadding them. And but it's not some like broader ideology where it's like, oh, you licorice shouldn't kill people. It's like it's more so her personally doing it. I mean, maybe she petitioned to like have them not kill so many people. Maybe she did, but as far as we know in the show, she is content to just have Uh,
She
to just be
never
able to,
chastises Takina for using lethal
yeah.
rounds the entire show.
And my point isn't that that on its own is a problem, but it's more so that it just goes back into the idea that, like, in this ideological narrative, Takina and Chisato don't really stand for much of anything. I mean, we already went into Takina, right? And I'm not going to rehash that, but Chisato, why does she go and fight Majima? It's because DA told her to, and that's the reason. Okay, fine. But then she has a conversation with Majima, and, this is like where theoretically they're going to bounce ideas back and forth, but nope. They just have that wet fart of a conversation.
All right,
And it's like,
Crunchy. I can pinpoint the exact problem that you have with this. It's because I disagree with you saying that Chisato doesn't stand for anything. She clearly stands for something, just like how we both said that Majima stands for something. The problem is that they stand for not two different sides of the same coin, not like two opposite ends of one spectrum. They stand for parts of a problem of two entirely different issues that don't really
yes,
correlate with each other.
absolutely. And it's like, she doesn't here's another problem I have that's sort of wrapped in that, which is that Chisato and Takina don't really voice many opinions about the DA outside of, oh, sometimes you should disobey orders. Sometimes the DA messes up. But they never say anything about the broader scale of the issue. They never question whether it's right to invade people's privacy or whether it's right to be judge, jury, and executioner. At least from what I can recall, obviously Chisato values life, and maybe that could lend itself into her believing that, like, you ought not to be judge, jury, and executioner. But we don't really get, at the very least that I remember, any dialogue of Chisato being like, I don't think the DA doing that is very good. I disagree with the DA on this point. They all just exist in this system to maintain the status quo while having very few opinions on what they actually do in this ideological narrative where the main characters don't have any ideology.
Yeah, it's a big problem when your main protagonist and your main antagonist are finally coming to blows in the epic climax, and then you get to that climax and you find out, wait a second, like, yeah, we have our differences, but like our main difference, our connection between us is that I'm trying to basically uphold the side that will kill as few lives as possible, whereas you're trying to kill like more lives. Like you're fighting for a cause, and whether or not you think you're the villain is, I guess, up to your definition. It's very unsatisfying to the viewer, or at least it was to me, to be like, well, I like these characters and I like for what they stand for. It's just that you've put a fucking, or you've put a basketball in Chisato's hands, and you've put a fucking lacrosse stick in Majima's hands, and you're telling them to play a fucking freeze tag. Like what's going on here? What are the
That's such
rules?
an apt metaphor.
It's like they're playing two different games here, sport.
And it's like,
Now, if Majima was like very gung-ho about taking lives in order to expose the piece, and like not caring who dies in the process, like kind of like how he was in that whole subway shooting incident, then, and Chisato had like more of a reason to challenge his ideology. Like, even if she agreed that hey, you know what, DA operating in the shadows and keeping this faux peace, maybe you have a point, but you can't like take innocent lives in order to expose that lie. Maybe I will bring the justice to the DA in my own way. I'll get them exposed without having to spread 1,000 guns throughout Japan and letting innocents die.
see, it's like
But
the
they don't
show
do that!
has the cast layout to do it, where it's like Majima could be the guy who's like this Machiavellian I hate the DA, but I'm willing to use any means necessary. And then Takina or Chisato, either one really could, one of them could support the DA and think that freedom or no, that security is better than freedom. And then the other one could be like, I exist in the DA, but I really don't like what they're some of what they're doing. However, I also don't like what Majima's doing. I disagree with his Machiavellian do whatever.
It's literally
for
the
your cause.
meme of I wish society would change. Oh, but yet you participate in society. How curious.
I mean,
it's
yeah, to a
literally that
certain
meme.
extent, except that like the show shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't. They should stand for something. At least anything other than personally motivated pacifism in a narrative that has basically nothing to do with it.
Well, while we're spitballing ideas to make the conflict more sensible, take Takina's willingness to kill into play and be like, no, Chisato, Morty, we have to kill Chisato, we have to kill Majima, or else he's going to he'll just find another way to wreak havoc. If we kill him now, we can save lives. And then Chisato would come to could have an interesting clash with Takina and be like, nah fam, I'll spare his life too. Or I don't know, like they were going into some interesting character moments where even Takina like fucking bloodied from her battle with Yoshi's assistant, and like blood running down half the side of her face, and she's got the look of death in her eye, and she's trying to kill Yoshi, be like, I'll fucking rip your heart out, bitch, to save my girlfriend, and just keeps firing the gun at him even though it's like well out of bullets, and she's just trying to hold her back. Like that's cinema, that's Kino. I like that. Let's get a little more of that. Let's get a little more of that passion, get that fire back in the belly, instead of this weak ass, hey, we're clashing over two entirely unrelated conflicts.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and like I think more of Chisato and Takina being two sides of the pacifism and I'm willing to kill in certain scenarios, just heightening that contrast would do a lot more. It would make Chisato's pacifism more interesting to me, whereas now it's just feels kind of extraneous. It feels like the show is, I was calling it a melting pot earlier in during the first block of episodes. It's a melting pot that went nowhere. This show it goes some places, but it never goes in the right place, except for like some decent emotions here and there, but the narrative is just a fucking mess. I mean, don't get me started on all the little things that just bothered me, because that's another thing that bothered that like made the general viewing experience unbearable at certain points, where it was like I just kept on noticing things and couldn't stop nitpicking everything because the show is
you became CinemaSins.
Not quite that bad, but I have so many fucking notes of me just going like, hold on,
wait a second, the door was CG. 0 out of 10.
God, well, then the Made in Abyss fandom would hate me if I give a 1 out of 10 to Dawn of the Deep Soul.
Alright, why don't you regale us with some of these nitpicks, so we can judge you aptly.
Alright, so I'm still going down, because it's really... Okay, so here's one of the ones that really got me, alright? So in episode 11... Majima flashes the licorice insignia on TV. Now, I'm not sure if it was always like this, but in this scene, one of the licorice out in public has, their schoolgirl uniform, and then the licorice insignia on their uniform that they're supposed to be using to be undercover, so that nobody figures out what the licorice are. And then everyone turns towards the supposed high schooler, in the licorice outfit, recognizing the insignia. How have they not been discovered yet? Well, are you telling me that they have these girls in these school uniforms with the licorice insignia all around the city, and presumably in other places as well, unless they're literally just in this one city.
I think
And
what it was, because like no one knew that the licorice symbol what meant that they were secret operative child soldiers.
I get that much, but are you telling me that nobody thought and it just asked themselves, what does that mean? Maybe I'll look for the school where it comes from. Maybe I'll do the tiniest bit of research about these people who just seem to be stationed about in town consistently, just fucking everywhere. And nobody's going to question why the insignia's there. In our real world, people make conspiracy theories out of nothing, and you're telling me nobody's going to think to check where that insignia came from? Are you telling me there's no underground online community making up theories about what this could possibly mean?
You're telling me 4chan Anon is not posting about this nonstop? Q is not looking into the licorice conspiracy?
And the idea that the licorice, as an entire fucking organization, would do this, would put their insignia out in the public when they're supposed to be undercover, is fucking retarded. That is stupid.
I will say, it is weird that they do have their logo, even though no one would have a frame of reference of what it means that they have their logo out. The only thought that came to my head is like, if it's any possible legal liability, like if they were to get exposed, then they'd be like, oh, it's okay. Like, we never truly operated from the shadows. We properly labeled all of our soldiers. So if we ever got found out, you like, it's not like we were like hiding out of plain sight.
I don't know. It just seems so preposterous to me that they'd still be undercover after all this time. That's obviously not the worst example of them somehow still being undercover. I think we both agree on that one, but
no,
me,
the worst part is like, well, maybe worse than exaggeration, but like I'm trying to figure out how they cover up that one part where the civilian shoots the licorice and the licorice fires back, and they're both clearly injured. I guess they play it off. I assume what they did, they played it off as actors in like the deep cover thing that Kurumi makes up to save all their asses. But like, what do they say to the guy who got shot? And be like, when do they come and be like, hey, that clearly was not like a fake round. That was a real live round, and I fired a real live gun, and my real life shoulder, real life bled. Like, what do they do to that guy? Do they like black bag him?
I think they just make him disappear. That's what they'd have to do, because like, yeah, okay, I don't believe for a second that the entire population of this of this city is going to get this super realistic like state of alarm broadcast with Majima.
Yeah, no, that part was stupid. You cannot fake that shit.
Yeah. But then they just play it off to the public like, it was just an advertising campaign. And then it cuts to people being like, oh, they got us. Oh, they really pranked us there, Morty.
We fell for it. We got jebaited.
It's just like, no one would think like this. I'm sure, like, if this happened in real life, some 70% of people would be like, that was real. They're obviously covering something up. There was more to that than meets the eye. Let's discuss it on 4chan.
It's crucial that you get the 4chan part in there. Otherwise, it's completely unrealistic.
Yeah, that's absolutely necessary for suspension. That's the main problem with Lycoris Recoil. They didn't have 4chan in it.
Yeah, if Kurumi went on and I saw Kurumi write some green text one part, I'd give the show a 10.
I would too. As long as it was a funny green text, then the show would be a 10. But more baffling than that to me is, okay, so I'm gonna go down to my notes where, okay, so at the beginning of episode 12, we get introduced to, well, no, I don't think this is the introduction of him, but he's like this commander dude that's like above even the red-haired girl of the Licorice, right? And he is apparently also the leader of the Lilybell. He is the commander of both Licorice and Lilybell, both the boys and the girls. So he decides, or rather, the exact line, I think I wrote it down in my notes somewhere, right?
He was like,
So
well, now
the
that
higher
Lycoris has been
ups,
exposed
yeah.
to be this,
Okay, so
to
here
this
I'm gonna
evil
quote the
group.
entire. Yeah, I'm gonna quote the exact line, right? The higher ups came to a decision. Lycoris will be disposed, and then a few minutes later he says, "It's unfortunate, but every licorice well, he said licorice, but I say it that way, will have to disappear." Now, he doesn't say precisely why he wants them to disappear, but the strong implication is that the licorice, they just messed up too bad, right? It's irreconcilable, they need to go. The problem is that, okay, so Majima has this entire tower, the security cameras here, whatever, he's recording the entire thing, cutting to it on a live stream at various bits, and at this point in the story, the live stream is still going. So wouldn't sending the Lily Bell to kill the licorice, wouldn't that just expose the Lily Bell?
I feel, did they not cut the feed at that point?
Uh, I don't think so. Because
Because
no, it
I'm
was
pretty sure
Karumi. It was Karumi who cut the feed, wasn't it?
I, if she cut the feed the second time, there were like I remember that there were two streams, and I believe at the end of the first stream, he orders Lily Bell to the government guy orders Lily Bell to wipe out the licorice, and then in the second stream, Majima comes back. The order of events may be a little fuzzy in my head, but I'm pretty certain there were two different live streams.
I know there were two different live streams that I do remember, and I know that Majima did manage to come back through Hacker Man, Roboto-kun, or whatever. I'm just thinking because like I remember that, but I also remember immediately thinking upon seeing that line, hold on, the live stream's still going. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but like I'd have to check and that'd take too long. So we'll leave that up in the air for viewers to correct.
That would
us on,
require
I guess.
professionalism, which is not allowed on Castaway anime.
Absolutely not. So yeah, the comments can tell me how right or wrong I am or whatever.
And I think that will transition us nicely into talking about the ending of Lycoris Recoil, which is sour, to say the least.
I mean, is there anything we haven't mentioned yet? Anything in particular about the ending?
I want to go into specifically the sweeping under the rug and the allowing of the licorice to stay around, because what I thought was gonna happen was that Majima was gonna expose the licorice, and that even after they played it, they were able to play it off as a big marketing stunt for the new place or whatever. That because this happened, like now like the entire thing has been, we know that the licorice can be exposed and can be compromised. So in order to prevent a scenario from this happening again, we're disbanding the Lycoris program, and so that way Majima could, even if he gets taken out, he could have like a Pyrrhic victory. Like maybe he didn't get like the exact chaos he wanted of civilians taking arms and killing them all, but hey, Lycoris got disbanded in the end, so maybe and it throws the peace into question now that the Lycoris aren't around. Is that peace in Japan going to continue? Leave it a bit of a gray ending to leave it up to the audience interpretation. Maybe get a little artistic in there. And hey, now that the DA is gone and Takina's reason for being at the time is not a thing anymore, maybe now she can live her life, and Chisato now is like, hey, cool, I don't have to worry about trying to kill people anymore, or like even have to even consider the possibility. And now we could just like live our lives as cute high school maid cafe girls or whatever. And like be like, hey, freedom, won in the end. And in this whole freedom versus security debate. And then the show's just like, yeah, we're just gonna sweep this all under the rug and maintain the status quo and not say anything interesting. And by saying nothing, they end up also being like Yeah, no, security's good actually. We should have the secret police, the thought police in on patrol at all times, so long as the public is unaware.
Even with the ending you're describing, I still would have been incredibly bitter and probably just as angry in this podcast, but it would be an improvement. And yeah, I completely agree with you that I don't think it intended to say that the Lycoris are like a good system, because clearly there is some level of criticism of the system, but the writers just screams of like I
Well, the problem is that, and maybe this could, come into play again, but also probably not. The fact that the licorice are still a thing now, it lends more of a credence to a season 2, because if the licorice got disbanded, there wouldn't be any more like interest or interesting events to look forward to in the narrative of Lycoris Recoil, because like the whole conceit of the show would be done away with and we'd have a nice little way to end the show. But now that that door has been left crept with a creep open with just a tiny crack, I can't say with confidence being like, well, maybe they'll bring it back around in season 2 question mark.
the entire narrative reeks to me as someone who wanted to make a narrative that seemed more complicated than it was, that like wanted to have complex ideas that we're still discussing as a society even today, and wanted to incorporate those into the show, but also wanted to make it I guess marketable and like not not leaning too far in one direction or the other and leaving it up to interpretation or whatever. And you can do that. I mean, to bring an example, right? Death Note, even though Light did obviously get his demise and that does obviously swing down on a side, it's still open-ended enough that like people, discuss who was right at which point. And the writer even consciously said like, hey, I want this to just be a fun manga. I don't want people to get too caught up in the ideology, so I'm going to not go too in depth with it. I'm going to keep the pace light and fast and use the thematic backdrop as
Light and fast.
something, yeah. And use that as a thematic backdrop for the series, but while never going too far into it. But you want to know what made that fine and like actually good? It's because Light and L were two characters with very specific ideologies who disagreed with each other and who actually like went head to head, fully believing what they were doing. And also that it just had a way better ending in most regards. But it's like, that's exciting to watch. You don't need to necessarily come to like a full-on conclusion in your show about which side is correct, but to just leave it sort of like this haphazardly, just like haha, we'll maintain the status quo while also having characters that don't or do believe in it, who knows, and just sort of leave these ideas spiraling around in the narrative while not really taking them anywhere. just just screams of like some of like writers wanting to incorporate ideas but not wanting to do much with them, and not wanting people to disagree with the show.
Yeah, it does kind of smack of a they've they went into the show and set up this interesting, clash of themes and ideologies, and now here we are with it all behind us and we're left wondering what was the point, which is not something you should do like with any piece of media, to get to the end of the whole thing and be like, what the fuck was the point of it all then.
Yeah, that is definitely what I was thinking when I finished Lycoris Recoil. Also, here's just a quick question, because I maybe I'm just stupid, but like, what were the fireworks for? Were they just so that Majima could celebrate his supposed new world of balance?
Bro, he's the Joker.
Was was he literally just doing it to troll Chisato?
I guess.
Cause like that just if that's the case, that's even worse. Because like I was interpreting it charitably and saying that like, oh, he was going to celebrate his new world, but no, if it's just to troll Chisato, I mean, then it's
I
like,
don't think it was
well, he really
specifically
did
to
believe
I,
in
I
that
think
thing.
I think it is the former. I don't think he went out of his way to be
Okay.
like, haha, I'm gonna prank her so fucking hard.
Well, obviously, he used it to like have more leverage in his fight against her, and get her more pumped and like needing to make a decision. That much was
Actually, you know what? There
of
you
it.
go. That's the reason.
Well, that's not the reason for the fireworks, or maybe it is, but like he was lying about them in order to
Yeah.
make her more pumped up.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
he explicitly says he wants to have like a fair final fight with her, and that's why he doesn't just outright kill her when her heart starts giving her problems.
Yeah. And so, and that was just to okay. So I guess my initial impression
He's the
was
Joker.
right. Yeah, he do be the Joker though, but
He is a Tumblr
okay.
sexy man.
So I
And
think
now
that's
that he's like
about
all bandaged up, he's even more of a Tumblr sexy man because they like scars on people for some reason.
so I think that's about all I have to say about the show. I know it was probably the most negative I've been on the podcast about anything.
We'll close it out with some last minute praising of the show. The action in the choreography and the animation took a big leap up in the climax. Pretty much everything involving Chisato and Majima's fight. So we're finally back on the level of, excuse me, exciting action scenes from the second episode. I think the second episode where they're getting Kurumi in out of the firefight, and like they're using shit like the briefcase as a cover.
Yeah, the action choreography is good. I have no real complaints there. Obviously, Crunch doesn't like action moment, so can't really appreciate it in the same way you do. But it didn't go over my head. I do realize that this is a well animated show and well choreographed action.
I appreciated the use of strategy in the fights with Majima specifically fighting her in a dark environment to beat her talent of being able to see movements and predict their trajectories, whereas he's able to use his sound and do things like click his mouth once and then be able to step over all of the he's a dolphin man. He has echolocation powers.
Yeah, his power, basically superhuman power, is that he can hear really well, whereas Chisato can tell where a bullet is going pretty much instantly.
She sees well.
Yeah, which I guess is a fun dynamic in terms of fighting style. Wish there was more behind it, but I don't not appreciate it.
There's strategy on Chisato's side where she purposely fires a gun right up to his ears so that way it ruptures his eardrums.
I mean, more behind it in the sense of I wish these characters were fighting for more. But I did really like the moment where, yeah, she does use the gun to make him deaf, basically, temporarily, make his ears hurt.
What I want to know is how the fuck did Takina break through like the metal sheeting over the windows from that high up in the because from the looks of it, I thought she had like burst through like with like a like when she had like a bunch of forward momentum on her side, but she couldn't have possibly done that because they were like high up on the tower, and the only way in were through those windows that were boarded up with steel.
You
So
know,
like
I didn't notice that while watching the episode, but now that you've mentioned it, I am really curious as to how she got that much forward momentum.
because like the motion it's almost like it looks like she's breaking through like a window, like how you usually do. You got the arms in front, you're already in a forward motion, and you're already like smashing through, but like she had to punch the steel sheet several times in order to get through. So like, what happened there? A1.
Yeah, there are little bits of weirdness like that, like I was mentioning in the first block.
And you were talking plot holes earlier. Notice one thing. Well, not plot holes, nitpicks earlier. I was being like, there's this one moment in the final episode that like got me thinking, like, wait, what the fuck? Where it looked like Chisato allows Majima to die, or like is willing to cause his death, because she like shoots him a bunch in the head while they're on a crumbling glass floor. And
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
at one point, after like firing enough bullets, the glass finally uh gives way and they both fall. And but it looks like she's like trying to make it so that he'll fall.
Yeah, you aren't wrong. And what
And also, I want to know
I
how the fuck he survived that.
well, yeah, that's also another valid question, but I mean, it's a fucking anime. He survived getting exploded into water before. The man's basically indestructible. But yeah, I mean, I guess Mika didn't even have to undercut her entire decision to be a pacifist, because she just goes back on it for Majima. This narrative is a clusterfuck.
It was a confusing. If she didn't mean, if she was just trying to like knock him out and keep him from moving by just shooting him in the face with the bullets with the non-lethal rounds, then the framing and the direction was really bad, because immediately after she's done firing and Majima gets that flashback of when she was a kid and is like reminded of her killer instinct, then it was bad framing to have it immediately be followed by him falling through the floor. Because like I read that as she was trying to get him to fall.
That is exactly what I read it as too, and I've been in the AniList forums, and literally everyone has the same takeaway from that scene, that Chisato was trying to make Majima fall to his death. Which, yeah, another thing that undercuts her moment of being a pacifist, at the cost of her own life, but nope. Actually, I'll send him through the glass. I'd say that's even more than a nitpick. That's either the worst directing ever or a really confusing decision.
Yeah. Right, and I think I don't have anything more to say about the show unless you do.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm doing one final sweep through all my notes.
All right.
All my other notes are just about all of the Yuri moments, like how Chisato gets her second wind after hearing Takina's voice, and then like even to the point where she gets a heartbeat sound, even though it's made explicit that her heart doesn't beat. So I was like, I wonder what the symbolism behind that is, Mr. Director. But no, they can't be girlfriends.
So
they're just really good friends.
Okay, so I do want to ask though, has your opinion on the show changed at all from discussing it on the podcast?
It's definitely cemented itself as probably gonna ever be higher than a 7 to me, but I feel like what they were able to accomplish though, and all the stuff they like, the entire show as a whole, I feel like is doing too much good and too much well to want to leave it in such a state of disdain for me. Because
go on.
I was just gonna say, to compare to the other big show from last season, Call of the Night, and even to a further extent, fucking Engage Kiss, which was the other A1 original from the same season that I did not care to watch past the first episode. What made it special was like, it had some good ideas at first, and it had the animation and art is pretty consistent throughout. Like, yeah, the action kind of dips until the climax, but like the animation quality, it's pretty consistent throughout. The soundtrack's good. The character writing, it takes a bit of a dip into this new second block as as the plot is ramping up, and it can't be as like quite as witty and creative because you can't really otherwise it just becomes Marvel. But like it coming like taking everything away from it, I wouldn't feel good calling it a bad show. But I wouldn't feel comfortable calling it great either because it fucks up too much at the end. That's why I slap it with the 7 out of 10. It's good, but it's not great.
Well, this podcast has made me even more comfortable calling it a 4 out of 10. And I guess the main thing is that, like, I wanted, like, even as someone who wasn't necessarily invested in the narrative, it sucks to see a show with so many ideas consistently squander literally all of them. And like there's a good show in there somewhere. The slice of life is fun. The Yuri is before it got squandered.
The Yuri baiting is good.
Yeah, the Yuri I was thoroughly baited. And it's like there's good stuff in here.
I want to swing it back real quick to my initial impressions on the show versus my initial impressions on Call of the Night, and how my final thoughts on both shows kind of swapped places at the end of both their runs, and how it comes down to, even though I was more into Lycoris Recoil's like vibe themes and what it brought to the table more than what Call of the Night stood for at first, it's the following through on like it's the follow through that matters. Like, yeah, the first impression is good. Obviously a show is judged as the sum of its parts, but it's that hook is important, because if you don't give me a reason to care immediately, then how do you expect me to care, I don't know, 3 episodes in? And now with my opinion on Call of the Night, it does have a good start, but I would argue Lycoris Recoil still has the better start of the two. But Call of the Night was able to take its ideas and run with them and develop them into something I didn't expect and appreciated, both because of that and also because of what it had to say was interesting. Whereas Lycoris Recoil had something good at the start, only to end up going nowhere. It's what I'm trying to say is, this is the difference between these two shows. Is the difference between a show that starts with something good but then ends up not really saying much, versus a show that has not much to say, seemingly not much to say at first, but then can take what it's got and work with something that ends up maybe even being better than what it started as. It's all about the follow through.
See, that's another interesting thing, which is that during our watch of Call of the Night, I was consistently praising it for saying something, whereas like a lot of shows don't even try to say something. Call of the Night says something in basically every episode. Like at the beginning, it's about how people who feel ostracized from society tends to exist in the night when there are less people, and over time it just keeps on saying things every episode. And Anko is basically, at least to me, the epitome of that, where Anko has such a firmly established ideology as to why she hates vampires and why she's dedicated herself to hunting them. And it's like comprehensible, understandable, and the main character at the very end of the series decides, I'm going to oppose those ideals. And it's like, that's what you want to see. That in a show that is about different ideals and ideologies and different people's interpretations of the world, you want to see that kind of stuff. You want to see that go somewhere. Lycoris Recoil goes nowhere. What happened with the pacifism theme? Well, Chisato kinda made a choice about it, and then it got completely usurped with a confusingly directed, nonsensical choice on her end, seemingly choice, and also Mika just undercutting her sacrifice. What about the freedom versus security? Well, actually, Majima didn't care about that at all, apparently. He just, he wanted to balance them. What happened with just anything in the show, and other than the characters, which I can see someone, getting something out of it and being like, oh, I really care about Takina and Chisato as characters, and that's why I find it so interesting, and like that's why the finale made me emotional. I can see that. I can't see. I mean, I guess you can. I can see appreciating what it's trying to do, but to me, the way I read it more cynically is someone wanted to make a show playing with complex ideas, but either they didn't know how to follow it through, or they didn't care to make it actually mean something.
Now, this last question might not be relevant to the audience, but I'm just curious to know as a final point. What score did you give Rusty Bisco again?
A 5 out of 10.
So you like Bisco more than Lycoris?
Yes.
Damn, that's crazy.
I mean, I can explain why if you want to spend more time on the podcast on that.
Sum it up in 30 seconds.
All right. Rusty Bisco is an adventure show with a ton of wacky ideas, and I like adventure shows. The characters connected with me, honestly, more than the ones in Lycoris Recoil. They had a really endearing dynamic with each other when they were when they were out there adventuring. And even though it does have the same, honestly, even worse action scenes, and even though the ending is pretty much
worse,
I'd say
this.
Yeah, I'd say it has a worse ending. I think Rusty Bisco hit so much higher highs and like made me so much more enraptured, and also just has Iruru. And if you have Iruru, then yeah, I'm gonna like your show. At least
it does have Pawoo.
It does also have Pawoo. I think that Rusty Bisco had, even though the finale messed up a lot of what it had going for it, it wasn't as complete of an undoing as Lycoris Recoil, where you can still go back to those adventure episodes and be like, this was cool. Whereas with Lycoris Recoil, you go anywhere in the show now and it's just, oh, they didn't follow through on that either.
Oh yeah, we never mentioned Mizuki.
What does Mizuki do?
Nothing. she is just the fun comic relief.
I mean, yeah, she's a forgettable character. She doesn't really do a whole lot.
No, that's the biggest sin of this show. Not even the lack of a follow through on the themes or the theory baiting that ultimately went nowhere. It's the fact that they had a cute older girl who flirts with guys and drinks all the time, and she doesn't play a role in the narrative.
That is a crime. That is horrible. See, I like Mizuki's design a lot, but
yeah,
she doesn't
the
do
show
anything.
has good designs.
She's really pretty. Too bad she does nothing.
And yeah, I can't think of anything else.
I feel like we've exhausted all the possible discussion from this show.
Yeah, it's okay. The r/Lycoris Recoil, after I've posted this podcast, after them just listening to the first few minutes of it, have already doomed us to the Shadow Realm, so... I mean, if you did stick...
Okay.
Hey, listen, if you did stick around all the way to damn near 2 hours of us talking about the show, then how about you go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and tell us what you thought. Did you agree with any of the... Did you agree with our list? Go full watch mojo. Yeah, let us know what you thought about Lycoris Recoil. Did you like the ending? Do you think it was better than we gave it credit for? Worse? All your thoughts. Just dump all of your thoughts. We could use the engagement, because God knows we need a comeback after the Owl House.
God, it's so unfortunate that the Owl House is crippling our channel, even though it's good.
Hey, who knows? Maybe thanks to them, actually has 1,000 views right now because we actually struck while the iron was hot.
I mean, hopefully.
And yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Castaway Anime. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Soggy Croissant.
And you'll see us next time.
Bye-bye.